Hi, this is Hui Wang. Welcome to CASB Fundamentals. In this video, we're going to talk about the two breach cases in 2019. One is related with Elasticsearch, but it's anonymous customer, and the other is Capital One. Many people think that hackers are bad guys, but some hackers are actually security experts who use their knowledge and expertise to help companies find the security vulnerabilities and weaknesses to help improve their security enforcement. These hackers are called ethical hackers, or sometimes referred to as white hat hackers, as opposed to black hat hackers who have a malicious intention. A group of ethical hackers conducted the hacking in November 2019 against a bunch of target companies using cloud services. And one of the companies got hacked, and the hackers managed to get access to nearly 1 billion entries of customer data. And actually, they used a similar pattern of hacking and successfully conducted the hacking and got the data leakage on 6 to 7 companies using the same pattern of leakage. One of the victim companies was a customer of Microsoft Azure and Oracle Marketing Cloud. They also hosted a Elasticsearch engine as internal use to provide searching, indexing, and analytic services. The search engine was not what we understood like a search engine like Google exposed to consumers. It's just for internal use, and they also hosted a Elasticsearch database. The search engine supported REST API. That means it could be accessed through HTTP request. And the problem is the Elasticsearch database was not authenticated. The access was not authenticated. That basically means anybody could send the HTTP request through port 9200 to access the data. And what's worse, the data was not encrypted, and the data was not stored in table format like a typical database file. It was just JSON file. When JSON file was not encrypted, it's very straightforward, readable. Here is an example. It's not the exact excerpt of the file, but it's just example how it would look like. The cardholder's name and credit card number expiry date were totally in the entry in plain text and exposed to the hackers. Fortunately, this is just ethical hacking, and the vulnerability was informed to the victim company. They had that fixed. But some companies were less lucky. For example, Capital One, they were hacked by real hackers. Capital One is a large customer of AWS, and they hosted their application on EC2 and their data stored at AWS S3. The hacker's name was Paige Thompson. The hacking started on the 12th of March, lasted several months till Thompson was caught in July 2019. Thompson used SSRF attack, server-side request forgery, and he got the metadata of EC2, and from the metadata, she got the credential and used that credential to escalate the privilege request and expose the data from S3. Capital One did not disclose the details of the investigation, but based on the evidence published, security experts managed to reverse engineer and put the pieces together. So the flow would look something like this. Capital One as a IaaS, infrastructure as a service customer. They have their homemade web applications running on EC2 instance and their customer data stored at S3. You can take EC2 instance as a virtual application server and S3 as a virtual database. Web application takes HTTP request and processes the request and then sends the response back to the sender. the requested data is stored in the response payload. And most web applications would also have a web application firewall to screen the request so that only valid requests are passed to the application to process. The problem in Capital One case started around the firewall configuration. It was not well configured. So the hacker Thompson was able to send a forged or a fake server request, and that request passed the firewall and was sent to the EC2 instance, to the application. The request was requesting the metadata of the EC2 instance. Metadata should not be exposed outside because it contained the instance management data, especially the credential that was generated. The credential was different from what we typically understand as password. The credential was temporarily generated. It has an expiry date, and it was used for the communication between applications and between application to the data storage. So once obtained the credential from the metadata, the hacker used that credential to make escalated privilege request, and the application and the request and the storage executed the data retrieval command and exposed large amount of customer data, 30 terabytes of data downloaded, and Thompson published that data to GitHub, and that's how she was found out and got caught. Capital One breach had been staying on the top headline on news coverage for several days, and the business impact was massive. It was the top one data breach in 2019, and the total of 30 terabyte breach. 30 terabyte of customer data was exposed. That include 100 million US card users and 6 million Canadian credit card users. And besides credit card, also the Canadian social insurance number and US social security number, total of 1.1 million numbers exposed. And no surprise, the Capital One's stock price plunged by 6.5%. Now let's take a look back at how it could have been prevented from happening. Of course, the kill switch is the application firewall misconfiguration, and that is a very, very significant vulnerability. In addition to that, metadata service is unique to cloud, and since credential is included in the metadata, perhaps there could be another authentication layer for the metadata service. And once you have the credential, you can escalate the privilege of the request. And there could be a restriction as to the level of the escalation of that privilege. And in terms of data egress flow, there should be a threshold to the volume of egress data flow, instead of letting 30 terabytes of data downloaded to the same site. And of course, another biggest vulnerability in this is that the customer data was not encrypted, and whatever Thompson downloaded was just the plain text, and she can publish that directly to GitHub. From the two breach cases, we have a good understanding now as to the security risks posed in cloud computing and the lack of security posture management, lack of data protection, lack of authentication, etc., such security vulnerabilities. And at the same time, you might wonder, hey, wait a minute. In the case of Capital One is the customer of AWS, EC2, and S3. Shouldn't Amazon be held liable in this case and pay for the damage, for the loss of Capital One? Keep that question in your mind, and we'll come to that later. See you next time.